also on Kesmi FM as well as Justice FM. Also ZA FM and also Bangu FM, so Piele FM, all in the northern region, and also Eagle FM in Wali Wali, Dabon FM. We're also live on Radio Kitawun in Sauboba. We are also on Asase FM in Pandai. And also we are on Pandai Star in Pandai. And also Dasma Radio in Yendi, as well as Bewa Radio, also in Yendi, Sankara Radio, Simile Radio in Kumbungu, Radio Bimbila in Bimbila, and also Bid FM in Bimbila, as well as ABM Radio, Zabzugu. Well, my name is Robicon. Thank you so much. Today, we're having a live discussion with the former president and also the 2020 presidential candidate for the National Democratic Congress, John Dramani Mahama. He's here with us for a discussion. He's actually been on tour, around the country, and this happens to be the third region that he is visiting because he's been to the Upper East and also the Northeast. Now he is here in the Northern region. We want to have a discussion with him. What is this tour all about? And also try to find out what exactly is prompting him to take this particular step. We'll have all this live on Radio Tamale and also the affiliates networks. My name once again is Robicon Monason. And then the former president is here. Let me just welcome him into the discussion because I know he has a very busy schedule today as well. Your Excellency, welcome home.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm grateful to be having this discussion with you. It's a great opportunity anyway. But let me, first of all, I want to take it from you. When the 2020 elections, I want to take it from that angle. When, after the presidential elections, and it was getting closer, inching closer that you were not going to be declared victorious, what was the feeling? I want to take that from you first.
Well, first let me thank you and just make a remark that it's wonderful the syndication that takes place that makes you able to, with an interview with one station, be able to reach almost the whole country. When we envisaged FM stations, at the time I was Minister of Communications, we didn't realize that the technology would develop to the extent where you could have this kind of networking. So I want to say thank you to you and to all your listeners across all the stations that you mentioned, all over the northern part of this country, and even some stations in the south. I want to say good morning to all your listeners and thank you for having us. I'm not alone. I'm with my running mate, Nana Jane Opokwajwan, a very capable woman who stood by my side in 2020. And so I speak for both of us when I say that we want to thank all the people who supported us in the last election, not only those who supported us, even those who didn't support us, even those who didn't vote for us. I think that anytime we hold an election and we all come out and participate in choosing our leaders, we contribute to the democratic growth of our country. But to talk specifically about 2020, not really much difference. I've participated in elections in this country from 1998 at the highest level, that is as running mate to Professor Tamales. But even at the parliamentary level, I have participated in elections from 1996, because I was three-term member of parliament for Bole Bamboy. And I know what it is to run an election. I know what it is to win, what it is to lose. And so you get used to winning or losing because there are two things. You either win or you lose. And you must prepare your mindset for both. So if you have to prepare speeches, you must prepare a victory speech. You must also prepare a losing speech. And so as a practical politician, I know that it will be one of the two. And so you anticipate both scenarios. But of course, you always expect that victory will be yours, and you hope that victory will be yours, and you work towards victory. So in 2020, we had done a lot of work. We expected we would win, but unfortunately, what happened? I don't want to go into a postmortem of that. Our party is doing that postmortem. But we just thank God that the elections passed peacefully, because what every country prays for is peace. There are other countries in which elections like this take place and they descend into chaos and warfare. But thankfully for Ghana, we've held 8 successful, elections. There have been peaceful transitions of power, and we've managed to maintain the peaceful atmosphere in order that we can continue to grow and develop. And so, as I said, we went to the Supreme Court to contest the elections. The Supreme Court gave their judgment. We accepted the results of the judgment of the Supreme Court. And let's move on. We wish President Nana Akufo-Addo well, and we wish the MPP government well. And we'll play our part as the opposition to not only hold the government accountable, but also to collaborate with the government where it is doing well in order that the lives of our people can be better.
I mean, talking about wishing President Nana Akufo-Addo well, I do recall that back in 2016, one of the bigger arm was touting your government or your administration as a very corrupt administration, and it was actually largely on that basis that you were voted out of power. Now, looking at your administration, comparing that to the current New Patriotic government, what would be your own personal assessment in terms of the fight against corruption and the tag that was actually smeared on you?
Well, every government will be confronted with the canker of corruption, because corruption appeals to a certain innate, inordinate feeling of man, to acquire material wealth. And so even in the advanced countries where their institutions are strong and fighting corruption, there is corruption. What every government does is to fight to minimize it. And there are 2 ways of doing that. One, strengthening the institutions of state that deal with corruption, and strengthening the institutions of state that deal with democratic governance. If you strengthen those institutions, it helps in the fight against corruption. Ghana has the best laws in the anti-corruption fight. If you look at our anti-corruption legislation, it's probably one of the strongest in the whole of the world. But the point is the laws themselves will not get up and catch corrupt people. It is important for the political leadership to show the way. And so, yes, every government will face corruption. It is how you deal with it that matters, because then that is what is the test of your will to deal with corruption. I think that being competitive in who has fought corruption better and all that doesn't help anybody. The electorate must be able to make up its mind. In our time, we did our best. Any allegation of corruption that came, we investigated, and we took some steps to make sure that we dealt with the issue. And so if you take most of the issues of corruption in the MDAs and so on and so forth that came up, we did take steps. And one of the major ones was the JIDA issue. Most people forget that I set up the ministerial committee to investigate JIDA, because the media was raising issues of corruption in JIDA. So we set up a commission to investigate JIDA. And it came up with all the, it came up with its reports and the issues of malfeasance. And we referred it to the Attorney General. The Attorney General, dealt with it. Some of those who are accused of corruption went to court, and those cases, they fought the cases against government. Others, like the World Bank issue, for the first time, I had the unpleasant duty of prosecuting my friend and colleague, because I'd been in Parliament with him, and he was our chief executive of JIDA, Abu Gapele. I had the unpleasant duty of prosecuting him because of a World Bank facility that we had taken, and eventually he ended up convicted. It's only recently this president has granted him a pardon on medical grounds, and I thank the president for giving him that pardon on medical grounds. But I'm showing you some of the effort we put into fighting corruption. Where it came to our attention, we dealt with it. There are cases where ministers had to resign. They were given the option to resign or be sacked, and they opted to resign, and restitution took place. Those who were accused of having flouted the procurement rule and overinflated, prices of items were asked to refund. And the JIDA, one particular company, refunded almost as much as 50 million. And people don't understand it. They say, why didn't you prosecute them? The structure was that what happened was they said, look, we're going to train these people. You pay us for training them. We will give them these equipment and on loan. and we will retrieve that money and pay it back to government. And so government advanced the money to them. And so they trained the people, they gave them sewing machines and so on and so forth. And it was that after some time they'll take the money back and they'll pay it back to government. And they didn't pay back. And so the recommendation was that that money should be retrieved from those companies. And they paid 50 million Ghana cedis. One of the companies, paid back. So in all these cases, I'm just highlighting some of them. There will be many. I mean, there was a case of the ghost names in national service. We prosecuted that. We sacked 110 national service officers and put about 30-something of them before court, And so several such cases come up. How you deal with it is what determines your will in the fight against corruption. So what I'll say is we did our best. This government is confronted with its own issues of corruption. And I don't want to go there and try to be a judge of whether they're doing well or not. It's for you, the media, and the rest of the public to determine, how you think they're doing.
That notwithstanding, I want to pick your brains on the aspect of, I know you've passed some comments regarding the previous special prosecutor. Now there's a new one that has actually been appointed. What are your thoughts about his appointment, and whether you think that, because government already indicate that it is one step it has taken ahead of your administration in making sure that the fight against corruption is top-notch?
Yeah, I wish the new special prosecutor well. It was a central plank of Nana Akufo-Addo's campaign in 2016, and that was his major instrument of dealing with corruption, apart from in the interview he did in the debate where he said he will use the Anas principle. After the Anas principle, he's abandoned it, so let's put that aside. The special prosecutor is virtually his only instrument in dealing with corruption. Unfortunately, the first special prosecutor did not get the kind of cooperation he needed to be able to do the work that he had been given. We heard him complain about funding of the office in terms of logistics, in terms of finance to recruit the kind of personnel that he needed to do the job. We had many complaints about that. But since then, we've also had many complaints where the executive and the political establishment had attempted to interfere in his job. The beauty of the special prosecutor is the independence of the office and his ability to investigate corruption, notwithstanding whose ox is God. When you take that independence away, it robs the office of its usefulness. And I think that our comrade Martin Amidu's major difficulty was that the independence of the office was compromised, as we've seen subsequently in the things that he has said. And that robbed him of the effectiveness, both in terms of compromising his independence and in terms of not providing the adequate logistics and financing to meet the optimal functioning of that office. We hope that those things will be corrected under this new special prosecutor. He's a young, enterprising lawyer. He's got a brilliant career, and in private practice, he's been very well respected. And so now that Parliament has passed him, I hope that he will move that expertise and brilliance into the job of investigating corruption across board. Most of the corruption, age-old, would have been held accountable by now. And that's why you have people who were in my government standing trial. There are some who have been sent into prison. So a lot of the corruption that is happening will be happening under the current dispensation. And so the fact that this particular president and government appointed you are going to be able to cut through that and be able to go into investigating, acts of corruption that are taking place, not only under this government, but with people who are very close to the center of power. That will determine whether he's successful or he's a failure. But I wish him well.
Great. So let me also acknowledge, before I go to my next item, that we are also live on Nkigli FM in the Savannah region in Bole. Now, Your Excellency, I want us to zoom into the agricultural sector, because you have also been criticized as well by the government of underperforming, because some of the figures that I have actually perused through, indicated as of 2020, where the government is your government in 2016 made about 21% to GDP, and then this government currently in this year is also making about 18%. Now, they have talked about including, bringing a policy that has to do with the planting for food and jobs, which they said it has created a lot of employment, and also even at some point in time, the minister said we had a bumper harvest. What is your take, and what has been your contribution compared to this particular administration? You think that the agriculture sector is doing well, compared to yours?
You see, when you measure agriculture in respect of GDP, it will continue to go down, because as the economy grows and modernization kicks in, agriculture as a percentage contribution to your GDP continues to go down. And so that won't be a very good measure of the efficiency of the agricultural sector, because over the years, from when we came into office in 2010, the services sector overtook the agriculture sector as the highest contributor to our GDP. And so the rate of agricultural contribution continues to go down, because you have digital services, you have services, you have the oil industry came in 2010, then you have the gold industry expanding. And so all those things expanding continue to push down the contribution of agriculture to GDP. But I understand exactly what you're talking about. We started talks with the Canadian government under what they call the Maple Project, to provide some stimulus, strong stimulus to the agricultural sector, because we realize that, one, the agricultural sector is a major sustenance to the bulk of our people, and that is the sector that employs the largest amount of people in our economy. And so we started to fashion a project that will give assistance, to the farmer, especially peasant farmers, in order to move them out of peasant production into medium to larger scale production. And so instead of just farming 1 acre to feed his family and then incidentally sell whatever excess he has on the market, push him up to about 5 acres so that he can go into the market. We wanted to turn our agriculture from sustenance agriculture into market-driven agriculture. And so that was the essence of that project. Unfortunately, we did not start to implement it before we left office. Government is a continuum. A new government came, and they decided to continue with that project. And they named it Planting for Food and Jobs. And so that project started. And that is the project that we currently know. There was a foreign component, and then there was a government of Ghana component. I cannot judge its implementation, but there was a very interesting thing the minister said when he said that they had created 700,000 jobs at a certain time. And when he said that, he was asked the basis for creating those jobs. And he said, because we distributed this amount of free fertilizer and subsidized fertilizer, each bag of fertilizer can create 7 jobs. And so, based on that, we created this number of jobs. There's been no scientific measure of how many jobs were created. But they are measuring tools to be able to do that. Unfortunately, that hasn't been done. And so, it's been done haphazardly. Some of those bags of fertilizer ended up in Burkina Faso and Mali and Niger. And so, if it was 7 jobs per bag, then it means some of the 700,000 jobs he was claiming as a result of the number of bags of fertilizer he had distributed had ended up in Mali and Niger and Burkina Faso. So it's not been done scientifically. Unfortunately, it's virtually unraveling, because at times when he's created the impression that food prices have gone down, food prices have actually gone up. There was a time when he claimed that plantain was 3 cedis or something, and you, the media, and I congratulate you for that. You fact-checked immediately, went to the market and asked the plantain sellers, how much is this finger of plantain? And it was way higher than the minister had indicated. But right now we face a crisis. We face a crisis because, yes, the foreign component of the program has ended. It's supposed to be sustained by the government of Ghana. Unfortunately, the hazards of the economy means that money cannot be provided to sustain the program. The budget is under stress. The economy is in crisis. And so persons who supplied fertilizer last year, and I've spoken to some of them, have not been paid under the program. And so it limits the ability to import and supply fertilizer this year under the program. And so I started from the Upper East region, the thank you tour, and the farmers' complaint is that they have no access, not only to subsidized fertilizer, but even to unsubsidized fertilizer. They're willing to buy the fertilizer at cost. But the same suppliers are the ones who bring that fertilizer. They sell some subsidized under the PM Planting for Food and Jobs program, and they sell some, unsubsidized. And so if you're a commercial farmer, you think that the amount of bags you can get from Planting for Food is not enough, you go and buy unsubsidized fertilizer to supplement. Now people are willing to even buy unsubsidized fertilizer, and you can't find it, you can't get it to buy, because the suppliers have been constrained in their ability to put it on the market. So we're going to have major problems with food next year because, for instance, maize is a major product that we use fertilizer to produce. Already the price of maize is above 400 cedis. This is unprecedented. When I left office, maize sold between 50 and 80 cedis per bag. Today, maize is selling already at 400 cedis. Most poultry farmers are shutting down because they cannot buy the maize. The price at which maize is selling, they cannot commercially produce poultry for the market. Government is taking steps to import maize from outside to supplement in order to bring the prices down. But until that comes in and, it affects the dynamics of the demand and supply. Right now, maize is about 400 per bag. And so if you eat TZ or you eat Banku or you eat any of the things that is made from maize, you'll find that the prices of the food has gone up significantly.
So, let me just a second, some 2 seconds around this question. Maybe we need to re-echo that. On the issue of the Planting for Food and Jobs, did your government find or probably scout for funding for that project? Because it's been a tussle between the NDC and the NPP. When you hear the communicators talk about, we got the funding for it before we left office, this government says, oh, no, we came and secured the funding for it, and so on and so forth. Can you throw light on that?
Well, that's it. I thought I explained that. I said it was based on negotiations that we had with the Canadian government. And we hadn't started the implementation before this new government came. And so that project that I talked about in connection with the Canadian government is what metamorphosed into Planting for Food and Jobs.
Okay, very well. You're still live with us with the former president, John Dramani Mahama. Now, let's talk a bit into the economy, because I have heard the government talk about how
And it's not only Planting for Food and Jobs. I'll also refer to GCAP, the commercialization of agriculture. The GCAP project was, negotiated by us and the World Bank, but the continuation of the project went under this particular government. So there are all these projects that one government negotiates, but then government should be a continuum. It's because of the extreme partisanship in our governance system that we see that like something must come to a stop, something new must start under a particular government. And that is because maybe when the new government comes, they try not to give credit to the old government that, look, this started under this government, but we're continuing. I have never had any hesitation in indicating that a certain project started under a certain government. And that's why, when I went to commission the Bui Dam, the first person I extended an invitation to was President Kufuor, because the funding for the Bui Dam was secured under him. And so it was finished not under President Mills, it was finished in my term. That's 2 presidents later. And so I invited him, and he came, he sat, we jointly commissioned the Buidam. That's how it should be, and so I don't see this thing about, where this started, where this ended. But if credit is given, that look, thanks to this, we are here. I think that's good.
Great. So I've heard criticisms already by the government on the economy, responding to similar criticisms coming from your government, your party, that the economy indeed is run by just borrowing, or the borrowing has actually gone so much higher. The government has also, this current government has responded by indicating that yes, it's true that the borrowing has gone up, but then if you look at the aspects of inflation, it has come down. If you look at the aspect of interest rate, it has come down. Growth rate is rising. What are your thoughts on that?
You see, the point is, you can do so much propaganda with the economy, you'll be exposed. Just you wait. We're going. Aren't we going?
We are?
Just you wait. We're going. Inflation is down. Go to the market and find out if inflation is down. The same economists who were arguing that single-digit inflation was a non-entity and that what mattered was the food prices in the market, today have changed their voice and are pointing at the inflation rates from Ghana Statistical Services. There's a book, 1984, by George Orwell, and there's something they call double speak, where you are speaking something and meaning something else. The dishonesty is so galling that sometimes it's laughable. The same people who argued against looking at the statistics and look at the practicality of the people's lives, today say that, oh, look at inflation, look at so and so and so. The same people who say we don't eat inflation, today are telling you to look at inflation. This kind of economic semantics, we've had it for too long. And the people are looking at the reality of their lives. You see, the thing about this government is it believes that propaganda can resolve everything. And so even when your life is deteriorating and things are hard, they tell you that, oh, your life is better. Today, this government is saying that your lives are better today than it was in the past. Do you believe it? You sitting here. Is your life better today than it was in 2016? And yet they tell you your life is better and that things are much better. We're borrowing a lot, but don't worry. We're managing the economy prudently, And it will unravel. The thing about the economy is you cannot ask they said, I don't want to mention anybody's name, the fundamentals will eventually expose you. And I say that you can do all the propaganda, and I paraphrase them, you can do all the propaganda about the economy. The reality of the people's lives will expose you. Because ask any business person, ask any person, how they are managing to live, in terms of their lives and their welfare, and everybody will tell you that things, are not the best.
They say COVID is one of the factors.
COVID has just come as an excuse. They are blaming everything on COVID now. This economy was tanking already. And the thing is, I've accused the finance minister. He's never come to, explain. I've accused him that he does creative accounting. We've never had this in our lives. Everything you see in the budget, the finance minister will stand by because all the figures are put into the budget. Today, this finance minister, in order to let the deficit look good, inflation look good, and other things, he puts a lot of expenditure as footnotes and does not include them in his budget calculation. So he'll give you a better deficit figure, but the reality is that those arrears are sitting under the table, and he's paying them. Today, you go into his accounting and you see arrears, zero. Arrears payment, zero. But he's paying arrears. How is he doing it? He goes to banks and then gets the banks to discount the arrears. And then he keeps it as a debt under the table. And then he finds money eventually and goes and pays the banks back. He's just manipulating the economic figures. And I accused him before the election. I'm saying it again, that he's manipulating the economic figures.
So now, what do you make of the situation we find ourselves talking about people, complaining so much about the government's inability to, deliver on what they promise in the area of giving us satisfied living by getting us into the realm of that dreamland they promise us. I want to pick your thoughts briefly on that. Then we can make progress into the road sector as well.
You see, the thing is, when things like this happen, you think that you have won an election, you have won the argument, you have done this, you have done that, or you have achieved your political aim. Now, what you don't realize is that the bigger impact and the more deleterious effect of what you've done is on the faith of people in our democratic governance. A lot of our youth are getting discouraged in our democratic governance because they say politicians are liars. Politicians don't tell the truth. And you hear it not only among the youth, but it's widespread among the electorate, because a government comes and says, I'll build 350 new secondary schools, and on the basis of that you vote for them. Or a government comes and says, Yetisikaso akomding, and that when I come I'm going to create jobs so that all of you have money in your pocket. And 5 years on, you're poorer than even before they came. It says, I'm coming because we're going to create jobs for all the young people. And 5 years on, more young people are unemployed than ever before. These things, the net effect and the intangible impact is that it shakes the faith of people in the democratic, system that we have. And that's why today you can find young people come out and say, just fix the country, fix our country. We've had enough of your talking. And I keep saying that the Fix the Country movement, I don't know why the MPP have taken it personally, but it's an indictment on our collective leadership, all the leadership, from them to now. Of course, this exacerbated it with the lies they've told the population that they are not able to deliver on. But we should not say that it's only because they are in government, and so that message is meant for them. Fix the Country will continue beyond MPP. And when NDC comes, they're going to say, that bridge that makes us unable to cross and go to the market in the next town, fix it. They'll ask you to fix it. So I'm saying that this is the time to engage our youth and say, these are the constraints. What can we do better? We need an agenda that reforms and is more radical in terms of changing the fortunes of the people of our country. And I think that it is not in the head of one president or in the bosom of one political party. It will take a lot of consensus building. It will take a lot of collaboration. It will take a lot of accountability, holding people accountable. They say break the eight. So sweep every useless thing we've done under the carpet, put somebody who is amenable to our party so that we don't account for our 8 years. No, accountability must take place. You've been in government for 8 years. A new government must come and hold you to account and say, why did you do this? Why did you do this? People are happy to run away with the loot that they have made. You've held us to account. I came out and said, prosecute any of my people who you believe was corrupt when we were in government. And we've been there. Some of our colleagues have been taken into prosecution. Some have gone to jail. The same way, they must be ready to be held to account after 8 years to the Ghanaian people. People have stolen a lot of money in these 8 years. They want to quietly continue so that they can sweep it under the carpet and go and enjoy their loot. The people of Ghana will not allow that.
So let's talk a bit into the road infrastructure. I recall 2019, the government promised a year of roads. 2020, they repeated same. We are in 2021. There's still, a lot of areas that people desire good roads. Your government actually talked about, especially the Eastern Corridor Road. I mean, your government couldn't complete or work on it before it left power. Run us through your own achievements when it comes to road infrastructure, especially, let's narrow it down to the northern part.
I cannot recount and mention all the roads we did, but I mean, there were many roads, key roads that we were working on. For instance, we were working on the Boga to Muhenwa Road, because that was one of the last corridors where a regional capital was not connected to another regional capital by a good road. And then we also worked on the Wa, Damango, Sola Fufuso, Tamale Road. And so that opened that ring. Unfortunately, we didn't finish the Tumuhan connection to Wa before we left office. And that so far has stalled. And so it's one of the roads that government needs to continue. We're doing various segments of the Eastern Corridor Road. And so, for instance, we're doing the Nakpanduri to Otidamanko segment. Several sections of it have been asphalted. It is left with connecting the bridges. The bridges have been done, but they needed to fill and connect the road to the bridges. And so if those segments are done, then it means that at least from Nakpanduri to Pandai would have been done. And then you take it from there through to Otidamanko. That segment has not been done yet. They had widened the road, put gravel, but they hadn't yet worked on it. Then once you cross to Damanko, the Damanko to Nkwanta section, we gave it to some Chinese companies and then First Sky. And all of them were working on that segment. Then we had after Nkwanta, the Dodipefeso segment, which was done with a European Union facility. It was bituminous surface, but the intention was that once the bituminous surface is done, we'll put an asphalt overlay on it. Unfortunately, that has not been done. So the bituminous surface is, eroding. But then beyond that, then we had a Jessican stretch, which we gave to Leader Company. When this government came, they asked them to stop work. And so they stopped work for almost 3 years or so. And then they came back and asked them to go back on site. So right now, I'm aware that they are on site and they're working. But the main problem is after Hohoi, the Peki stretch, all the way to Asikuma Junction. That stretch had been worked on, asphalt had been put, and another segment of it, 040, which is the base you put before you put the asphalt, had been laid. And when they said they should stop work, it's been lying there for God knows how many years. And since cars have passed on it, you even think that 040 had ever been placed on the road in preparation for asphaltic surfacing. And so that's the current state with the Eastern Corridor, particularly. There's also the stretch from the Tema roundabout. There's supposed to be a new bridge, which I negotiated with the Japanese to build over the southern border at Vodivo. It's supposed to be a new suspension bridge. That has also stalled because Ghana hasn't come up with its components, the local components of that particular project. So there are many projects that were ongoing which the government stopped, and now they are picking and choosing, which ones they want to continue, and then those that they haven't paid the contractors for. The contractors are sitting and not doing any work. And so that's the current situation, with roads. In Saboba area, we're doing some of the roads, Saboba Cherepani and all that, and the government asked that work should be stopped, and since then, those projects have stalled. I don't know when they're going to come back to come and continue. For instance, Atebubu to Kwame Danso, was another project we had asked a company from Western Region, Justpon, to do. And when the government came, they stopped it. But we are done from Kwame Danso to Kajeji, that is to the water side. So you go and you find a good road from Kwame Danso to Kajeji. But from Atebubu to get to Kwame Danso is where the difficulty was. We couldn't give it to Justpon at the time because Ghanem was on that road. And Ghanem had an old contract and was having difficulties with equipment. So we moved Ghanem from that road and gave to Justpon. And if it had taken another 12 months or 18 months, that whole stretch from Atebubu to Kajeji would have been finished. But unfortunately, we left office and the new government has new ideas, and so we are where we are.
So finally, on the road sector, I know you've been accused in your own region, the Savannah region, for example, that you've done little in terms of road network. And apart from the Sola Fufusu road that leads to my own hometown, Wa, I mean, you've not really done much when it comes to the road infrastructure in that area. Are there some major roads that within the Savannah region?
Well, there's so many. I mean, Tamale Karaga Road, we're working on it. And work was proceeding very well when the new government came and stopped it. Today, the Karaga Road is what it is. We're doing Tamale to Salaga. Work was ongoing. There were equipment working day and night, and the road was moving. And they came and asked them to stop. And the point is, the roads are left for so long that even the work you did deteriorates. And so when it's awarded again, then what happens is it's awarded at a higher cost than it was eventually. So as for road projects, we did a lot. I mean, we did Tamale to Kumbugu. You should have seen how the Tamale Kumbugu road was. Yeah. And there are so many other roads. I can name them. That's what I'm saying. You know, off the top of my head, Tamale, Nyankwala, you know, and so many other such road projects.
So now let's also get on to the area of health. In the northern region, I want us to narrow our discussion a bit to the northern region because I know that people want to know exactly what your achievement within that sector is. Now, with the health sector, there's been so many calls, I mean, from even Ghanaians that we should try to investigate the New Patriotic Party. Now, the party, I mean, the government, the MPP government, its handling of resources with much emphasis being laid on the COVID-19 funds and also whatever surrounds the health sector. I mean, do you support calls of that nature in the event that your government comes into power or the NDC comes into power? Would you want to take the step into running investigations around some of these? I know a similar thing happened in Nigeria, how they handled the COVID-19 funds, for example.
Actually, we didn't even wait to come into office. I mean, we suggested that the Auditor General should audit the COVID-19, how COVID-19 funds were used, because remember they took $200 million out of the stabilization fund. Then they got $1 billion from the IMF. They got $400 million from the World Bank and other monies, you know, that were used for COVID relief. And when you have taken, you know, such public monies, you must account for it. I mean, when you spend public money, you must be audited. You must account for it. And so we asked for an audit of the COVID relief. Unfortunately, the Auditor General was hounded out of office. But the Finance Minister came to Parliament and gave us an overall picture of how much was spent. And he said 19 billion cedis was spent on COVID relief. Every Ghanaian will want to know how that 19 billion was spent. And it is obvious that this government is not interested in auditing that fund. It will take a new government to come and audit. Okay, you say you spent 19 billion. How was the 19 billion spent? They say they fed how many people for how many days in lockdown. I mean, when we saw the figure for which they said they spent money providing food, you know, it was just laughable, you know. And so there must be, that's why I say there must be accountability after every period of time. And the only person that can hold them accountable is if a new dispensation comes and says, how did you spend this? Explain it to the people of Ghana. You know, otherwise then the intention is to go beyond 8 years and sweep all this misspending under the carpet and give an easy pass to people who have made money illegally, you know, from the coffers of the people of Ghana. COVID-19 has been used as an excuse for a lot of things, you know, and it's being used for an excuse for the current, you know, hardship that we face. At the time, they promised free water and free electricity. We all know that somebody must pay for the electricity. It would either come from our taxes or it will come from somewhere. So if government says, Electricity Company of Ghana, don't charge bills for 50% of electricity consumed by all customers over this period of time, and you did it for almost 6 months, you must reimburse ECG so that ECG can continue to supply that power, because ECG must pay the power generators for the power that they get. ECG does not get that power free. And so if they don't bill the customer for 50%, they won't have money to pay the generating companies. And so when you deceive people and then you don't, my thinking was that when they took the COVID funds from the stabilization account and things, they would have used some of that money to reimburse ECG. They didn't do that. Then as soon as elections are over, they say COVID relief tax. And that money is going to be used to repay, what. And of course, people felt disappointed. And they asked, but why? Did you think, the electricity generators were giving us the power for free? Water. Now, after the free water, there are many parts of the country where water company cannot supply enough water. Before the free water thing, people were getting water and being able to pay for it. But it stretched the funding of the water company. And so now they find it difficult to supply enough water. So if you go to many parts of urban centers, you get water flowing to your taps maybe once a week, when in the past it would have been flowing more regularly. So it's affected, us not in terms only of the COVID relief tax that has come, but it has also affected the balance sheets of the utility suppliers because government has not reimbursed them for the amount of money they spent on providing those freebies.
The government says that it's going to construct 111 hospitals because they promised earlier to build 88, and they thought that, they were unable to access land, for example. Now, they have actually increased the number to 111. Now, you have touted your own achievements when it comes to the health sector, building of hospitals, and also even rehabilitating the Tamale Teaching Hospital. It's one thing that, a lot of people talk about around here. What are your thoughts regarding the government the sword was just cut on Tuesday for the construction of the 111 project, Agenda 111?
Well, I described it as an afterthought. This government didn't come to, take infrastructure seriously. I think that the experience after the last election is what has geared them to, want to put some thing on the ground to show that they've done infrastructure too. But it falls in line with our own policy. We said that every district should have a medical facility appropriate to the district. There are bigger districts and there are smaller districts. And so you cannot say one hospital per district because a smaller district might not need the kind of hospital you're talking about in terms of, we have district referral hospitals where you would have a hospital in a district where you can refer a patient from another district to that district hospital because that has bigger facilities. And so apart from the regional hospitals and the tertiary hospitals like Kolibu and others, you have district hospitals, you have polyclinics, and you have district referral hospitals. And so for instance, the one in Shayo Sudoku is one of our top-class district referral hospitals. It's got oxygen, it's got all the life-saving equipment you can find, say, in Rish Hospital, you can find in Dodowa Hospital. And that's why after we built that hospital, it's been the top-rated hospital in terms of the least maternal mortality, not only in Ghana, in the whole of West Africa. It's got several awards. And so we have those categories of hospital. This thing has not been well thought through. The thing about hospital is not a one-size-fits-all. You do a survey of the population and you put the health facilities based on what the need is. And so that's the policy that we were going through. Now this Agenda 111 is like, I haven't seen the detail yet. I don't know if it's come to Parliament, but if it comes to Parliament and we see the document, then we'll understand it better. But it's like hospitals of a similar size everywhere, and they're going to be given to several contractors at the same time to start working on, and they would have the same, fit and same, kind of capacity. Until I see it, I cannot, look at it. But the first seed amount is $100 million, I understand, from the fund that I set up, the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. I put $270 million in there, and that is where they are sourcing the first funding to start the hospitals. My understanding is that each hospital will cost for construction $17 million, if I'm right, and then another $4 million for equipment. So you're talking about $21 million. Now the seed money is $100 million. I don't know how much that will be able to cover. But then if each is $21 million and you're building 111 hospitals, then $21 million times 111 is about $2.something billion. And so people are wondering, how are you going to get the funding for, 111 hospitals? What people think is that the intention is to finish some of them and leave several of them halfway, or they will be at different stages of completion. And you say, oh, we started this, we didn't finish, but we started it. That's fine. But, the point is we want to see what is going to be the source of funding. How are you going to be able to finish these hospitals, and what scientific thinking has gone behind, the building of those hospitals. For instance, there's already confusion over two cities that are close to each other. And sod has already been cut in one for a hospital, and under 111 there's supposed to be another hospital. And these are almost twin cities, virtually a few kilometers apart. So why would you be putting two hospitals in the same catchment area? So I don't think that the thinking has been done carefully. And so they need to look at it again and make sure that it fits the needs of our people.
Let me try to zoom into job creation, because you already said earlier that you have a vision of creating about 1 million jobs. That was during the campaign period. Do you still have that in mind?
Oh, yes, we do. We believe that they can be created. And we're looking at different sectors. We're looking at agribusiness. We believe that one of the major setbacks we have is that while we always concentrate on production and we give support to the farmers to produce, we're not giving similar support to agribusiness and agro-processing, because the farmer produces and the offtake is a problem. It's these market women who come and take from them, and they take it at prices that make it not profitable for them to continue to carry out their farming businesses. And so we must have a group of young people who are ready to go into agribusiness and processing, so that they can offtake these products, add value to them, and one, it will preserve it so that we can maintain the prices of food, in the market, and we can even export. When mango season comes, mango farmers are crying because the mangoes are getting rotten, and yet we can put in the capacity to produce, preserved mangoes, dry mangoes, mango juice, and drink some ourselves, eat some ourselves, and the excess we can export. So that missing link in our agriculture is not the production end, because if you give the farmer the means to produce, he'll produce. But the point is, who helps him when it comes to the interface with the market? And that's where the problem is. And so we believe that we can create more jobs in agribusiness. We believe that if the mining sector is better regulated, we can create more jobs in mining, and there are several other sectors, digitalization, services, and all that, in which we can create more jobs. And so, yes, in the meantime, to allow, students to have something doing when they come out of school, NAPCO is a good concept, but it's an artificial job creation concept. It's not sustainable. You just keep them marking time and giving them 700 cedis while you think about what to do, next. What we need to do is to move to more sustainable job creation. And that's why when we were in office, we created Ghana Exim Bank. And Ghana Exim Bank was supposed to provide assistance to Ghanaian businesses to be able to expand their production and be able to take in more people. For instance, when I was in office, I gave 50 million cedis to the pharmaceutical sector to expand their production. And it was given to Ghanaian pharmaceutical companies, 7 of them. And all of them used it to expand their production line. And that led to an increase in employment in all the 7 companies that we provided that to. That's the kind of innovative thinking we need in order to be able to provide jobs for our people. But if we just come and we create NAPCO and we say, oh, we have created 70,000 jobs, or we come and we give 700,000 bags of fertilizer and say each one can produce 7 jobs, and so we created this number of jobs. Those are the kinds of political propaganda, that does not help you, because the reality will continue to face you, that young people have come out of school and have no jobs. The other thing is that we need to tweak our educational system. We're producing graduates in areas where business is not willing to employ. Our economy is changing, business is changing, industry is changing. They're looking for expertise in other areas, and yet we're producing skills in areas that are not immediately employable. So we have what we call a skills mismatch. And so if you want to employ, then you need to take that graduate and retrain them before you can use them for what you want. And now most employers are not ready to retrain you, and then they put you to work, and after 3 or 4 years, when he has trained you, you find a better job and then you leave him. So they want to leave it to government to do that training. And that's why we started with the technical universities, and we started promoting, expanding the technical institutes so that, and vocational institutes, so that we can push a lot more of our children into technical and vocational education, because that is the kind of, practical job creation that people are looking for. And that also gives them the skills to set up their own enterprises, because he can set up his enterprise in the plumbing sector to be able to provide plumbing services, not only to domestic homes, but also to enterprises. Because you go to a factory has a plumbing system for not only the washroom, but also for cooling the machines. And when you take plumbing to its highest level, it is not about your bathroom taps and things. It's about the plumbing system of a whole factory. So those skills are the kinds of things that we can develop to give our people more opportunity.
So on that score, I recall during the campaigns where you, put out this particular policy that you wanted to embark in terms of the job creation through the the vocational sector. One thing that was not so clear over here around the northern part is that, there was this confusion that, okay, if we had the, ability to pay allowances to students, why not we channel these allowances to the vocational students, so that when they come out and even do not have startup capital, but they can rely on what they have saved through their allowances. Instead, we are giving it to people, quote and unquote, who do not really need it, because they come out and they still depend on government for job opportunities. So why not transfer these allowances to vocational students, so when they come out after their training, they can start up by themselves?
And that's why we came with the free vocational technical education program and said that vocational and technical training at every level should be free of charge. Aside from that, we also had a program for the informal sector. For instance, I stopped at Pivy, and there was a young man who had finished at the Technical Institute, and he learned dressmaking. And so we're going to do a rally. I walked into a shop, and I spoke with him. I sat there and spoke with him, and I asked him, so what are you doing? And he explained to me, and I said, how many apprentices do you have? He had 13 apprentices learning from him, And so one of our programs was that, why don't we give these apprentices some support? Because there are many of them who want to do apprenticeships, but cannot do because they have to pay 100 cedis and then provide some schnapps and some things to their district. So what will it take for them to be able to go into apprenticeship? We will absorb it and put them in there and give them a small stipend, even if it's 50 cedis, to be able to take transport to work and back, so that these people are able to complete and set up their own shops and set up their own businesses. And so moving that support to the technical vocational sector is what is the most important, because then it will give you the kind of skilled manpower that you need to be able to grow your economy and make your country develop and progress. So we agree with you. If you look in our manifesto and you look at some of the work we did, and Nana Jane is here, when she was minister, we secured the World Bank facility that developed how many technical schools? About 13 technical schools, including universities, technical universities, and the laboratories of some of the existing public universities. That was all in an effort to expand, access to technical education. And until we create that skills match, she even held a conference, Nana Jane, where she brought industry, business, and academia together. It was a big conference. And so all the top businessmen and everybody were there. And all the university vice chancellors and their registrars and everybody were there. And she asked the business people, what kind of skills do you need at this time, in this age of our economy? And it was interesting. I mean, the kinds of skills they were talking about and the kinds of people they are recruiting was different from what our intellectuals and our universities are producing completely. You could just see the skills mismatch. A report was produced out of that conference, and I'm sure that it will be useful to go and take a look at it again and see how we can tweak, our academic training so that it matches with what industry and business are demanding at the moment.
So let's wrap on this issue about the National Democratic Congress. We're coming back to your own party, the NDC. The NDC came out with a roadmap. They are making suggestions to the Electoral Commission to make some reforms. I'm sure you have been detailed around the reforms and what they are seeking. Do you think that they are that tenable and the level at which the NDC want the EC to be structured?
It's an exercise we do after every election, and that is why in Ghana we've continued to improve electorally, anytime we have finished an election, because we do a post-mortem, we look at what didn't go so well and what went well, and then based on discussions we plug those loopholes and make the next election better. And often when we've done this under the ambit of a neutral arbiter, that is, some, respected person or other. I remember that under the last Electoral Commission, the Azukrab Commission was the one that sat and discussed issues of electoral reform, especially with regards to the register and so on and so forth. And so we had expected that after this election, considering the controversy that has existed between our party and the EC, that the EC will come up with some neutral arbiter. Put somebody with respect, to listen to all of us and come up with a report and say that these are the suggestions that the political parties have made in terms of electoral reform. Instead, immediately, Electoral Commission went into a retreat with IPAC. There are a lot of small parties that they've gone to resurrect. These parties didn't exist before. They've managed to find financing for them, and they are just a pack of wolves that they take to IPAC and cheerlead. They are cheerleaders of the Electoral Commission chairperson and her people. Anything they say, hey, let's vote. Hey, that's all. It's made IPAC such a joke, but we're willing to go along in the interest of Ghana. And so we said, look, we're not going to be part of this being a judge in your own case where you are the Electoral Commission, you conducted the election. You should not be presiding over what reforms we want to see in the electoral process. Let us have an independent arbiter. Let us go and put our proposals to them. Let them create a report, send it to you, you look at it, you make your comments, then we can now come together as IPAC and look at it, and the reforms we agree to, we all accept. So, since they decided to do it their own way, they went and they made their own proposals and all that. And we said, no, we're not going to be left out. We'll also go and sit and discuss, far-reaching proposals for electoral reform, which is what we did. We put a very high-powered committee together, and they went through and they came out with a report. And so we went and gave it to the Electoral Commission, and they said we should redirect it to IPAC. And the point I made was IPAC is not an established entity. It's not, I don't know who IPAC is. IPAC is a body that is advisory to the Electoral Commission, and it is under the ambit of the Electoral Commission. And so the Electoral Commission has to receive it and table it to IPAC. We cannot say, go and give it to IPAC. Who is IPAC? And that was the question I was asking. Who is IPAC? And so I told our party, I said, okay, send it to IPAC. So we'll say, Mr. IPAC, care of Electoral Commission, because IPAC resides in your bosom, And so my hope is that we have sent it back to the so-called IPAC, which is with the Electoral Commission. And I hope that they receive it in good faith, look at it. Our recommendations are far-reaching. They go just beyond the last election. They look at the whole legal framework, the constitutional governance, the legal governance of the whole electoral system, even including issues to do with the appointment of electoral commissioners and so on and so forth. So it's a very well thought out paper, and we have given copies to CSOs. We want to make it a topic of general discussion because we believe that it's in the national interest, so that we all, if we decide that we can adopt some things from it, including what other parties have given, then if we implement them, we can have a much better election in 2024 than we did in 2020.
I wanted to find out from you, in the event that the Electoral Commission do not give credence to this, this proposal or the proposal the NDC is making, what other steps are you going to, because I know going into the 2024 elections, it will be a very serious matter for the NDC. What will you do if these, proposals, or this particular proposal is not, accepted by the Electoral Commission?
Well, it will be Ghana's loss. It will be a loss for all of us. It's not only the NDC that should be the advocates for that. You, the media, should take a look at it. I don't know how many of you have seen our proposed electoral reforms. It's been published. You should look at it and join the advocacy for it. If some are nonsensical, you can ignore them. But if you look through, you find that a lot of them are not based on our partisan interests, but they are based on the national interest. And so it shouldn't be, so NDC, if they don't take it, what will you do? It will be Ghana's loss. It will be the loss for all of us. We will, however lopsided the EC goes again, we would have identified the loopholes that made it possible for people to skew the election in their interest. And we will take steps to plug those loopholes. But the point is, if those reform proposals are taken, it will improve the electoral process. Maybe if we're not able to get a better level playing field, it could lead to other things. Some include violence. Look at the number of people who were killed in this election. And that's what we want to avoid. We must have a better collation system, that does not create a situation where one electoral officer decides that he has done collation alone. And so people come and say, but what collation? And people start to mass up around the Electoral Commission Collation Center. Shots are fired, people are killed. We must have a collation system that is transparent, that does not create tension so that people come and mass up outside the collation center. And if you don't take those steps down, because of what happened, the next time we're going to be interested in what happens in the collation center. And so all the collation centers, we realize that, elections are won and lost at the polling station and the collation center. We're not going to go to court because you can't get from the court any justice. And so we're going to take more interest in what happens. And when that tension builds up around your collation centers and your polling centers, that is when people lose their lives. That is when violence occurs. And that's why we have, in those reforms, made suggestions so that we can have a situation where everybody feels, the election is transparent, free, and fair. People sit in their houses and just wait to hear what the results are. So it will not be our loss, it will be Ghana's loss. We will do our best to make sure that our interests are protected. But then if we do our best to make sure our interests are protected and it leads to violence or it leads to soldiers shooting people, then it means other Ghanaians would get in the line of fire and get killed. And it will result in the kind of impunity that took place not only in Techiman South, but in other places where innocent people lost their lives because they were going about their responsibility as citizens to make sure that the election was transparent, free, and fair.
We just inching into time, but I would want to find out from you what exactly, as a president as of that time, what was your bigger plan for the then northern region? What was the bigger plan that you had for the northern part?
Our plan for the northern part was to see an overall development of the area. And so we invested in health projects. You yourself talked about Tamale Teaching Hospital Phase 1 and Phase 2.
They've mentioned Abu Market.
Abu Market, to improve commerce, we re-engineered the whole of Abu Market. And then we're doing the other parts, which was the part that had been standing from my champion's time when I was from one student in Ghana school. That place. SK Menu was the contractor building it. It had been abandoned, and we came and took it up again and started to put it together. We're looking at improving the road network in the whole of the northern part. We provided water because we realized that in most of the savannah areas, water was a problem. And so we did the biggest expansion of water supply in the whole of the savannah regions. Bunkurugu got a small town water system. All along the eastern corridor, provided small town water systems for them. Wa got a new water system, drawing water from the Black Water, that's the Jambusi water system, to supply 200,000 people in Wa and surrounding areas with water supply. We did 5 polyclinics in northern region. Janga has one of them, and several of the communities. We did 5 polyclinics in Upper West region. We did the Tamale irrigation dam, which we didn't finish before we left office. It has stalled. It was supposed to provide 3,000 acres of irrigated land for the people in the Garu Timpani area. We did the feasibility study for the current Palugu multipurpose dam. We did the feasibility study for it. There's so many projects that I can talk about. We started the expansion of the Via and Tono dams, rehabilitation of the parts that were not were kept being underutilized, so that we can move water to larger expanses of it for them to be able to provide irrigation services to the people. We built markets in many of the communities. If you look at the Sola Fofoso Road, it was not just a road. In every community along the road, we either provided a school, clean drinking water, a market, a health center, or some, project for the community. I can refer to so many things we did in all sectors. We did the Tamale airport expansion, and I was there when we commissioned the new runway, and for the first time, a Boeing 747 took off from Tamale Airport straight to Medina to send the first batch of pilgrims to the Holy Land.
So what is it that we are hearing, that the funding for the airport, for instance, was in a weak support because you didn't have funding for it, but you rushed to go do sword cutting for it, and then so
the
on before you
airport
left?
was in phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 was the extension of the runway, the provision of runway lights and navigational aids, so that planes can land and take off at night and land in all kinds of weather. And so we did that phase, including the apron for the new airport, including refencing the airport area to prevent cattle and animals from straying into the area. The next phase was the terminal building and the road network within the terminal building. We completed phase 1. We approved the funding for phase 2 before we left office. And whatever has happened, I don't know what has happened since then. But I hear complaints that the terminal has been, made smaller. When I look at it myself, I say no. The model I saw was much bigger than this. I remember it had a hatch terminal, it had all kinds of things in it. But now when I see it, it looks like a very small thing. So I don't know what has happened, and I don't have access to the current, drawings to see whether it is the same as what I saw we were supposed to build. It was a much bigger, facility than what I see currently.
Your Excellency, we are wrapping up our conversation, but finally from you, let me get your own, mindset. Public sector workers are demonstrating. They said that they have only been able to increase their salaries by 4%, whilst those at the upper echelons are really getting, close to 80% and so on. What are your thoughts on that?
If you read our manifesto states that we should do a constitutional review in which we stop Article 71 and replace salary management with a salary, we call it an independent emoluments commission. That will fix salaries of all workers from the president right down to the gardener or the sweeper. And so that is our proposal. We believe that there's a certain inequity between Article 71 office holders and public sector workers. This is something that has been discussed over and over again. And our party believes that we should do the constitutional review is not only to do with Article 71, there are many other things under there. For instance, under Article 71, the president has to appoint the majority of his ministers from parliament. We're saying that free the hands of the president to appoint whether from parliament or outside parliament, so that he can get the motley of expertise that he needs to be able to do his job. There are other things to do with district assemblies and so on and so forth. So it's a whole constitutional review. Professor Mills of blessed memory is the one who initiated it. And by the time I left office, we had set up the Constitutional Review Implementation Committee, and we're ready to begin with implementation. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the buy-in from our colleagues on the other side, and that's why it stalled. But if we're able to move that constitutional review forward, it includes scrapping Article 71 and replacing it with an independent emoluments commission. And I think that will give a fairer, indication of what increases in salaries should be, because essentially, as leaders of the country, when you ask the rest of the country to tighten its belt, must also be willing to tighten its belt. And so when there's this kind of inequity, then it looks like the upper echelons of leadership are being treated more, much better than the rest of the public service. I can understand that because of the economic crisis we're going through, then it makes it difficult for government to grant a much bigger, increase than it did. But these are normally done by negotiation. In my time, we sat with organized labor and we agreed on what the increase should be. I don't know what processes went into this 4%, but it must have been negotiated, because we sit with the leadership and we agree on what the increase in base pay should be. And based on the increase in base pay, everybody gets an adjustment in their salaries. We also agree on the minimum wage and all that. I don't know what the processes were this time, but if it was negotiated at 4%, then it means that public sector should also look at those who negotiated on their behalf. They probably didn't do a good job in terms of negotiating.
Finally, Fix the Country organizers are calling for a scrap of this current constitution, or we should try to find a way of amending it properly so that it doesn't give so much power to the president or the executive.
Yeah, I believe more in amending it. I think that the constitution is good. It has served us well, but it must live up to the exigencies of the time. At the time that the constitution was drawn up, Ghana was a completely different place. We're just coming out of military rule and coming into a new democratic dispensation. We did not have the kind of demographics that we have currently. The population was much smaller. The youth bulge was not as big as it is currently. Ghana has changed significantly since 1992 till now. And so the constitution must be reviewed and amended to suit the exigencies of the time. So I don't believe in completely scrapping it. There are many fantastic things there in our constitution, but we can do an amendment that we all agree on in consensus and improve the constitution so that it can become a living document. The president does a lot of appointments, CEOs, chairmen, members and chairpersons of boards and things, and there are about 6,000 of them, if I remember by the last count or so. And so one person having to make all these appointments, it does take quite some time, and also often competence is not looked at. It is more political expediency than the right competent people. And so you need to look at, for specialized institutions, who is the president putting there? Are they just putting people for political expediency, or there are people who have an idea of what should go on in the governance of that particular institution? So if we can get another means by which these appointments are made so that the right competent people are sent to the right places, it will be better for Ghana going forward than the current dispensation.
Your Excellency, I want to give you a final word for you to say something to the northern region, because the entire northern Ghana is listening to you. What exactly would you want to leave them with?
I've spoken quite a lot, and I told you I didn't come alone. I came with my running mates. We had expected that we'll make history, and that if we had won, for the first time in Ghana, would have had our first female vice president. Unfortunately, that was not the case. She's a very capable woman. Everybody knows her, Professor Nana Jane. She campaigned very, very vigorously by my side. In spite of the short time after she was appointed, to the election, I mean, she covered almost every constituency in this country. And so I think that I'll give the last word to her. I'll just take the opportunity to acknowledge our chief imams, Tamale North, Tamale South, Sanergu, Tamale Central, Myo, Yendi, Gushegu, Sablugu, Nantong, Tolong, Bimbila, Wulensi, Pandai, Kumbungu, Saboba, Karaga, Zabzugu, Tatali. I want to wish them a new year. The Islamic calendar's new year started, I think, last week. And so I want to wish them a happy new year. And may we have many happy returns of the new Islamic season. And so I'll leave the last word to Nana Jane to also speak to the women of the northern region. The women have been a great pillar of support for us. And it is my wish that she also says a few words. Thank you very much.
Okay, so you're still live with us here at the Mariam Hotel, where we are having a conversation with the former president, John Dramani Mahama, and the that's the running mate, Professor Jane Nana Opoku Ajimain. And right now, she is going to share some few words with us. And for that matter, Prof, thank you so much and welcome to Northern Region.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, I'm grateful. Now, you, acted in so many capacities, and especially in the education sector. I know we're not going to run an interview, but then a few words that you have to share with the people of Northern Region and the people of Ghana.
First, I want to thank them. We want to thank the people of Northern Region. They've dealt well with us, but we also want to enter into further conversations with them so that going forward, we even do better. Yes, we are not afraid to accept our weaknesses because we are ready to improve. So we want to thank them for the support they gave, for the support they continue to give, and we are counting on even stronger support. I want to use your medium to reach out to the women especially. I was very, very touched by how they received my team and I, and also by all the work they have done in their own cultures, in their own homes, in their own communities. We know that we came campaigning for respect. We came campaigning on fairness and equity, on peace. And I know that the women played a lot of role in this. Many of them, along with the men too, did house to house. And I really want to suggest that it's never late, even to go back and individually say thank you. They know the homes they went to, they know the communities they visited. And it doesn't hurt to say thank you, just as we have also come to thank them. We also campaigned on many things that my boss has talked about, that His Excellency has talked about. We campaigned for quality education, for quality health care. We didn't come pretending to be better than others. We never do that. We campaigned on inclusiveness to achieve the common good, to make sure that life works for everybody, and also for improvement in the basic necessities of life. HE has talked about many, many aspects of that. We also campaigned on the need to continue building infrastructure in education, in health, in many, many aspects, and especially even in the intangible aspects, such as quality. You may not see it, but it is there. And we know that we still have huge deficits in these areas, so there's a lot of work to do. We did not come with promises that we have no plans of satisfying, because we have a lot of respect for the people to do what we can with everybody's support. And we came talking based on a verifiable record, things you could see. You could see the schools, you could see the health posts. Yes, we didn't do everything everywhere, but nobody can also say that we did nothing, or that we just came and, as Ghanaians say, talk plenty and then left. We did what everybody can verify. So we want to thank you again for your trust, for your faith, for your participation, and above all, for your respect. And we hope and pray that going forward, these values will guide us so that we can continue to leave a better record for the generations coming after us. Thank you very much.
Prof, thank you so much. You are coming from the academia. I wish, because we didn't go into education, but I think because of time,
Don't worry. Someday
yes.
we'll have a whole
Sure. So
program on it.
let me now give His Excellency the last bite so that we can wrap the conversation. Your Excellency, I mean, finally.
So, Pompo, the region in the northern region. Bunda Dorma, 1958. Northern region, Ko Ndabini, Tedaka Savannah, Man Northeast. Then we go Mother region, Mbongo. Then we go Mbongo Numpu Sokam, Ngunyina, and Kantanum people ma. Mbongo Numpu Sokam. To Wula Kababone tradition. To Tali, ne. Bensha Tenang, Kama Anya Kuli, Alo Ama Bensha and Kaso Kam Yina and Kanta Songa. The Samsa na Apo Agale and Pull so come. To then cut and Nangda. Tian Chang 16 regions, Mad Za, Umpo, Ban Pete Tete, Ka Umpo Ban Buti Pete Teba, because Teza Nyala Ghanaians, Teza Nyala Nirbu Yinga. Then so come Umba Numpo Northern region, so come Za MPP Nama, NDC Nama, PNC, PPP, so come Umba Numpo Za, Na Tenang election ma Mansudo. Sudoka Tazabora, Kagana, Chem Tony. Na Tuma Pam.
No problem. Thank you so much. So that's the former President John Dramani Mahama and the 2020 presidential candidate for the NDC. He just spoke in Dagbanle. I think his Dagbanle is much better than I can do, but I'm grateful. Thank you so much, Prof, for coming, and to all the media houses. I mean, Your Excellency, I'm just told that the Gonjas are also listening to you, but
I'll be in Savannah. So.
Okay, so he will certainly get into Savannah region. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a lot of media houses taking the feed. We are grateful. My name is Robicon. Thank you so much.